in a very positive way if we do the right things. Those 17 grandkids are why I'm the president of the NRA. And that's why I'm crisscrossing the country, speaking with NRA members and gun owners about what's at stake on November 6th. If the balance in power shifts in Congress, the lives of those 17 grandkids and all of us are going to be altered, perhaps forever. Plain and simple. Your Congresswoman Claudia Tenney has always been an ardent supporter of the Second Amendment. In the State Assembly, she went toe-to-toe against Mario Cuomo's They're
both the same.
Yeah, His terribly flawed and misnamed SAFE Act. In Congress, she co-sponsored and voted for the strongest concealed carry legislation in history. It ensures that 20 million law-abiding citizens with concealed carry permits like mine can carry in every other state that allows concealed carry. She voted for legislation to protect military veterans like me for their Second Amendment rights. She voted to strike down the Obama regulations stripping Social Security recipients like me of their gun rights without due process. She opposes the Pelosi-Schumer-Bloomberg system that would make me a criminal for giving a firearm to my grandkids. And we do that in our family. We also give them NRA life memberships. If her opponent and 22 other far-left candidates are successful on November 6th, Nancy Pelosi will become, once again, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. That means all House action would support the Pelosi-Schumer-Bloomberg Disarm America agenda. They're not gun control advocates. They are the Disarm America movement. The residents of New York's congressional district deserve better than a representative who flip-flops on the Second Amendment, demonizes law-abiding citizens and gun owners, and would march in lockstep with the far left and Nancy Pelosi. What the residents of 22nd District do deserve is a representative who will protect individual liberty and freedom, and not just for the 22nd District, but for my grandkids. Claudia Tenney has always stood with law-abiding gun owners who defended the Second Amendment against those who don't understand the meanings of the words shall not be infringed. She knows exactly what that means, and that's to the good of the people of the 22nd District. That's why I'm here on behalf of more than 5 million NRA members to announce our endorsement for your A-rated Congresswoman. We urge every law-abiding citizen, every member, every gun owner who's old enough in the 22nd District to turn out and vote for our good friend, Claudia Tenney. Thank you, Tenney.
Come on up here. I just want to sit. I want to actually invite up Tom King. Tom King has been a longtime friend. He's an NRA board member, and he's also the president of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association in New York State. So I'm just honored to have you here.
I'd like to announce that we, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, have also given Claudia an A rating and endorse her for re-election to the 22nd District.
And thank you, John. I really appreciate having you here. It's such an honor to be at the Binghamton Rifle Club, seeing so many people who are out there expressing your Second Amendment rights. I just want to also echo what Colonel North said, and I want to recognize and just understand how devastating the terrible occurrence in Pittsburgh was. I was in Israel last year for my first time. It was a life-changing event, and what happened to these people exercising their First Amendment rights, worshiping, doing what they are allowed to do under our freely, were sadly gunned down by some crazy person. And it's really unfortunate that this has had to happen ever in our country. And thankfully, I'm so grateful to the officers and those people who were able to rush to the sound of gunfire, famous Marine Corps expression, to be able to save these people, at least some of the people that weren't killed. But sadly, we lost 11 souls that day, and it's really a tragedy for this country. I just want to make sure we recognize that this is a terrible situation for any of us, and it is particularly hard for law-abiding gun owners to hopefully not be blamed for this, because we're the people that are keeping us safe. When I want to talk a little bit about Second Amendment, everyone says it's about hunting. It's not about hunting. It's about protecting us from tyranny, from our government coming to us, coming and taking our guns away from us. Look, at Andrew Cuomo is proposing a SAFE Act 2, which will require us, among other things, to register any long guns that we have and prevent us from actually exercising our Second Amendment rights. We are so honored to have a combat veteran, obviously a Marine. He's also a Naval Academy graduate. He's modest. Like my son, I think you got your ring on. There you go. Looks a lot like my son's ring.
We just had our 50th anniversary.
Oh, nice. Just want to say it's thank you to all the veterans in the room. I bet you there are a lot in here. I've noticed a lot from all branches what you do to protect our freedoms. You know, not just First Amendment, especially our Second Amendment rights. We are so grateful to you. It is. I still tell everybody the greatest 4 years of my life was being a mom at the U.S. Naval Academy. But I got to tell you, it's really an honor to follow along with the Marine Corps and be sort of part of the Marine Corps family. And my son is now really working on Toys for Tots this season. He's involved with the Marine Corps League up in Erie, Pennsylvania. He's getting a master's at the Naval War College, so he's really embracing his Marine Corps core principles, and he loves it. And I'm just so proud of him. And I never realized I was going to end up with a Marine, but it's been another great experience. So I just want to say thank you. I know we have a lot of veterans from all branches, and for what you've done and what you do, and to continue to stand for our freedoms in this country. It's so important that we preserve that. Our president is so supportive of your service, and as the colonel mentioned when I first walked in, we got to keep you elected so all of our military personnel can keep the raises they just got thanks to President Trump and the Congress. So, thank you. And you know, look, you know my record. I was a member of the state assembly for 6 years. In my second term, the governor came out. I knew he was going to do something. He always does something crazy at the end at each State of the State address. We had a warning in 2012 that he was going to do something, and into 2013. In this district, what many of you may or may not realize, this district is where Remington Arms was founded. Remington Arms has produced firearms for our military, for sporting enthusiasts, and also for personal protection. And it's a really important, iconic company. It's the oldest continuously running manufacturer in the same site in Ilion, New York, in the nation. And there it is, and we're still trying to keep them there. Obviously, the governor passing the SAFE Act did not help. But the Remington Arms employees are very strong supporters of Second Amendment rights, and they're very important to the economy of this region as well, not to mention what they produce for us. And so we went out with Remington. We did a multiple-part strategy in 2013 to try to prevent the SAFE Act from passing. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. Immediately after the SAFE Act was passed, after late nights, and the Assembly actually spent the entire day negotiating and trying to get a way to get this thing to not go through, because it took a lot of rights away from law-abiding gun owners. Unfortunately, it passed, and the day after, I immediately put in legislation to repeal the SAFE Act. And it was a lot of criticism for it. We're still trying to do it. Until we change this governor, we're not going to be successful in doing that. And until we change this governor, we could see even more of our rights eroded. You know that my opponent, I wanted to mention a little bit about him. He says he voted against the SAFE Act. Now understand something about the Assembly. I'm going to give you a little inside baseball. There are 108 members on the Democratic side and 42 when that bill was passed. We don't have a fighting chance on the Republican side, and Tom knows this as well as anyone. He knows the battle we're fighting there. They have what they call marginal votes. My opponent knew that representing people who worked at Remington Arms and having many lawful gun owners and people who support and defend Second Amendment rights, it wasn't going to be a good vote to go with New York City liberal gun grabbers to vote for the SAFE Act. So after we got to 75 or 76 votes, which is the majority, and right off he was the very last person, I think, or the last one or two, just when they called the votes, to put a no vote in. Today, and then for the last several years he said, oh, I'm a big SAFE Act supporter. Well, guess what? Now he's not only saying he doesn't support the SAFE Act, he wants to expand it. He wants it to go even farther. So thank God he's not going to be in the State Assembly to vote on SAFE Act 2, because probably he would vote yes at this point. This is the same guy who has voted 4 times for government takeover of health care. He's falling in line with Nancy Pelosi. He's going to tell you he's not going to support Nancy Pelosi. I won't vote for her for Speaker. I'm like, fine. Why are you taking millions and millions of dollars funneled through her dark money super PAC, which is why you're seeing all these ads? He's accusing me of taking money from NRA. I'm a life member of NRA. I was a life member of NRA before they donated to me. Because I care about gun rights. I care about all of our rights, their entire Bill of Rights. we stand up for those things. And I don't know if you noticed, but in Colonel North's notebook, I noticed he pulled open it and there was a Constitution. Don't you love a guy that carries his Constitution around? There it is. There it is right there. And so this is really important that we have this. I'm so honored to have someone like Colonel North who talk. I mean, I've watched war stories for years. I remember when I was a law student, learning about what was going on all across the world, never thinking that I was going to grow up and have a son who's going to be a Marine. Really honored. But let me tell you, this is as Colonel North mentioned, this is a really tough election. It's going to be very close. But gun owners need to come out. We didn't come out in 2014 to vote down Governor Cuomo, and he's continued to chip away at our rights. We need to get the gun owners out. If you only voted, if all the gun owners voted, we would easily win every election in New York State.
That's right.
But you're not voting. And I know the people in this room are showing your energy. If you have a friend or a neighbor or somebody who's a strong supporter of our rights, if they would only vote, we would have defeated Governor Cuomo. 1 million less people voted in 2014 than voted in 2010. We're in another midterm election. The governor's up. We have got to fight. We've got to get out there. We can defeat this guy, and we have to. If we don't defeat him, we're going to get 4 more years of this, and God forbid, another worse thing. If he starts becoming a candidate for the President of the United States, that's even scarier. Thankfully, I don't think that's going to happen. But I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here again. I'm going to continue to fight for our Second Amendment rights. We tried to get that gun reciprocity bill passed. It was coupled with the new NICS bill, and I know a lot of you were concerned about that. That bill is actually fine. It passed, and my opponent says we don't support background checks. Of course we do. That bill, the NICS fix bill, actually strengthened background checks and strengthened the integrity of the system to make sure that that crazy people are going to commit crimes and hurt other citizens using a gun are not going to get their hands on one. And so we are very concerned. There is no one more concerned about bad people having a gun than law-abiding gun owners. We care the most of anyone. We're the ones that have the most at stake. And so I think that needs to be emphasized. But, I really just want to say again, thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to the Binghamton Rifle Club. You've got one of your great champions. You've got the NRA right here. You got New York State Rifle and Pistol here. You've got a congressman. I've always had an A rating from NRA. I've always upheld our gun rights under a lot of aggression coming from the other side. I mean, my opponent is out marching around with the March for Our Lives gun grabbing group. So we have to make sure that we're fighting this fight. I can't emphasize enough to get out and vote. It's going to be a close race. But Binghamton, you are going to see better days. Let's hope that we're going to keep the tax cuts, keep rolling back regulations, giving you an opportunity to grow. For once, you're actually seeing, the first time in my life, or at least in 30 years, we are finally seeing people with money in their paychecks in this region. That hasn't happened in a long time. Whether you're retirees, working in a business, everybody is getting a tax cut except for the wealthiest. That's why the governor is suing the federal government, because all those wealthy donors down in New York City who give to my opponent are getting upset about their taxes going up. The wealthiest of all, Rosie O'Donnell, she just did a fundraiser for him. Alec Baldwin, you name it, all the crazies are out there doing endorsements for him. And so this election is really important. A vote against our agenda will actually raise your taxes. That's what they're planning on doing. They're going to abolish ICE. They're going to raise your taxes. It's funny. Even Kirsten Gillibrand couldn't admit the other day in the debate that she wasn't about ICE. They're protecting our border. They're keeping us safe. It's amazing what's going on out there. But thanks for your common sense. Thanks for your support of Second Amendment rights. And I don't know if we're taking questions, or are we not?
Yeah,
yes, we are.
Questions.
So thanks again. Anybody have anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Congresswoman and Colonel North, this is to both of you. This is in reference to the red flag legislation that's been ongoing. Mr. Brindisi, Governor Cuomo, and many prominent Democrats are trying to pass red flag legislation that violates due process and unlawfully, or in my opinion, in many opinions, takes away firearms unlawfully. Is the NRA working on that? Congresswoman, do you plan to try and block that, as there is a proposal for Congress as well.
Right now, it's got to get passed into law, but on the federal level, we will certainly try to do something we can to stop it, although I think it's unconstitutional as it stands. But that concerns me. I don't know if, Tom, if you've got an initiative out there to stop this. Right now, it hasn't passed, so,
Yeah, we also have.
I mean, it hasn't
in
passed the
state,
Senate, let's put it that way.
There's a statewide issue that's coming up, and we are opposing that. I'm sorry for my voice, but it's coming up all over the United States, and particularly the governor is pushing very, very hard for it, and we oppose it the way that it's written in New York State.
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no.
Our Institute for Legislative Action works on all these kinds of things. The whole issue that's most important, I think, all of us, is the lack of due process that's contained in the current version, and that's just totally unacceptable. And furthermore, if it did somehow get passed into law, it will be challenged all the way to the Supreme Court, and thanks to this president, this Supreme Court's gonna stand for the Constitution.
You mentioned Pittsburgh right off the top. Just any comments that you have in regards to what Trump said, just about arming guards potentially in places of worship at all?
It's unfortunate that we've reached, I didn't hear what the comments of the president were. Unfortunately, I'm not getting a lot of access to news lately. But it's unfortunate in this country that we are in the situation that we're in. But that's why I support the right to carry, especially for women, who are particularly vulnerable. I live alone, and I've got people following me all the time, going up and down my street. And I'm glad that I am able to bear arms. I'm glad I'm able to protect myself in my home, and I think that we all are very concerned about that right. Unfortunately, the society has turned very much very different than when even I grew up. And when I went to my high school, we had a skeet shooting club, and people brought their guns into the school, and they put them in the lockbox in the back and went out and did skeet shooting club. I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. We have a society that unfortunately I wish we could return to a similar path, but right now there's a lot of angst, and unfortunately there's a lot of people that get geared up and have mental illness, which is why we put in the NICS fix. We want to make sure that when we do background checks, people like this who have violent tendencies are not going to get access to guns.
Do you have a comment for that as well?
Well, look, we don't know all the facts about what was going on in this guy's life right now. What we are concerned about is that, if I give you an example, schools, where there was a shooting this morning, and places of worship. The NRA started a program called School Shield that has now been used by over 200 schools. And I gave instructions yesterday that I want our leadership to look at how and if and when that kind of program could be expanded to include safety for places of worship. And I don't want to say more about it right now because I don't want to make promises I can't deliver. But it strikes me that, and what the Congresswoman just said about the nature of our culture has changed dramatically. I grew up in this state, right? My brothers and I could take our deer rifles to school on the school bus the very first day of deer season. In fact, I was looking at deer season this year, but it's much later than it was when I was a kid. And the reality of it is that our culture there's something wrong with what's happened to us. And it's the sanctity of human life is a major issue. I mean, when life is no longer valuable, terrible things like what happened on Saturday and what happened this morning at the school, and quite frankly on the streets of America. Overall, the bottom line of it is we have to enforce the laws that we've got before we invent new ones, like the SAFE Act problem that we're going to have if that passes into law. I doubt that it will, but nonetheless, that's not the right answer to this problem. And what we've got to be is about searching for ways in which we can prevent this kind of thing from happening. Doesn't mean that every school teacher has to be armed or every preacher's got to carry a gun. But our assessment program has worked for schools.
Yeah, and we've actually, as you know, last year there was an initiative where there were a lot of threats going to Jewish community centers, and we immediately acted and put out information about how we can get resources and provide resources to some of the synagogues and Jewish community centers because of the anti-Semitism. And so those are other ways that we've looked to find protection. Another issue that I was a co-sponsor of the Stop School Violence Act, and that actually provides a grant program where schools can get school resource officers, they can get security equipment to protect their thresholds. There's educational programs and working with local police. and local law enforcement about trying to identify students that are at risk who could potentially be shooters. We've already had a number of school districts in the district reach out and apply for those grants, and I've already received some of the money. So that is happening. So unfortunately we have to do this, but we recognize that there is a lot of people out, a lot of stress, some mental illness. We have to make sure that we protect, all the most vulnerable people, especially people who are praying, especially people who are in schools, especially senior citizens. It's very important.
And just one more, just with the mayor of Pittsburgh saying that, going to the common denominator of shootings, I mean, for both of you, do you guys have any statement on that?
Well, we've had a bomb threats recently from someone else who used another weapon. We think that people, one of the biggest problems in Europe right now is acid throwing. That they create acid and they throw it on people. We've had a number of incidents. On 9/11, nobody shot a gun. They were killed with airplanes and box cutters. So the biggest problem we have is violence and people with mental illness trying to commit crimes in any way they can, whether they have a gun or not. So.
Do you have a comment for that?
Good
at all?
answer. Good
Statement at
Can you
all,
just give
or-
somebody else a
Yeah,
chance to
one
speak? So, yeah, sorry.
So basically what you're saying is like enforce current, implementing new gun control.
Yeah, right now, we have probably some of the toughest gun control laws in the nation, save Illinois, which has the largest gun violence rate with the strictest laws, because they restrict their lawful gun owners, and instead, you have most crimes are committed by illegal gun owners. And so, the more you crack down and put us all at risk, the more you're gonna make our society less safe.
So you mentioned, supporting background checks. Do you think there are maybe additional steps that could still act as protection, but also not infringe on the Second Amendment?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we supported in the Stop School Violence Act, which is actually getting children when they're younger, understanding that people who maybe shouldn't be carrying a gun and identifying those people early, making sure that's reported through the NICS system. So when you go to buy a gun, you can't just walk in and just walk away with a gun. You have to go through a federal program. What we are finding out on the federal level is a lot of the local reporting agencies, whether it was local police, state police, and others, weren't getting that documentation into the system. So when you do a NICS check, you don't see that, and so we want to make sure we're strengthening the database so that when you do look up somebody, you do say, oh wow, here's somebody with a history of mental illness or a history of violent acts. I mean, we could have, if we only could have gotten the police, for example, to report on that Parkland shooter, he would never have been able to have a gun based on the type of violence. I mean, you could just see his Facebook activity. He even put out a statement that said, I want to someday be a school shooter, which is a felony. Those types of things nobody acted on them. I mean, how many times? 29 times or whatever it was, that the police went to this, to check on this kid who was obviously in a very vulnerable situation. We should have stopped that. We have the ability to stop that without infringing on someone's due process rights, without infringing on lawful gun owners who are out, exercising their rights to protect themselves. So there are ways of doing that and ways of identifying people who we think are at risk without compromising our rights and without compromising due process.
Another question, last question, anyone?
Anyone else?
I have a question. What do we actually know about SAFE Act 2? Is it in the works or what?
I've just seen the proposals. The one that, there's a lot of alarming things. The governor wants to double down on identifying everyone. He also wants to identify people who have long guns, whether you have a rifle, whether you have just a shotgun, hunting rifle. Every firearm that you would own would be registered now by New York State, so everyone would know that you have it. And there'd be a registry, so the police could go right to, or the governor. I'm not worried about our police. I think our police and fire are great. I think they support our Second Amendment rights, but remember, the governor has a lot of power, and the more he takes our power away and centralizes it into the governor's office, the less power we have as citizens, the less power our police have. So I'm worried that, registering long guns, and I don't know what else you might want to add, Tom.
Well, there is no such thing as SAFE Act 2 that has been defined yet. There are currently 55 anti-gun bills that have been pre-filed by the Democrats in the Assembly and the Democrats in the Senate, okay? Ranging from 50 caliber bans to COBIS again, to smart guns, safe storage, mandatory insurance, registration of guns. I mean, anything that you can think of has been pre-filed. Now, what normally happens is that somewhere along the line, the governor or somebody will pick 3 or 4 parts, 3 or 4 bills that have been introduced, and put them together as an omnibus bill, and that will become SAFE Act 2. So as far as what's in SAFE Act 2, no one knows for sure yet, but there are a lot of nasty things that have been proposed that I think that if you look at the information that the NRA puts out and the information that the Rifle and Pistol puts out, you'll see these bills, and with a short synopsis of it, and you're going to be very, very surprised at what they're going after.
Yeah, but we need to hold the state senate. It's important.
Oh, that's very important. Very important.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have the Binghamton Rifle Club board please join us? Do a quick photo. Where's Jack?
Very good. We're good.
Yeah, we're paid up.
Whether you're working or not, you're still always welcome.
No, we'll squeeze in.
George in here.
You have to get a little bit closer. Get back behind the. Get next to the. Next to the.
Get next to me.
There you go.
It's an Army Ranger.
We look here.
All right, so Jack's pretty accomplished wood carver, and since it's not every day that we get the NRA president, it's something that we'd like to extend to you. Thanks for your visit and remember us by.
I want to show this to everybody, because there's one that's down and to the left, so that's the way I actually shot it.
Welcome home, brother.
Thank you. I have one thing I also want to give you. I want to also tell you that I'm really grateful. I started my own little tradition, just like all you in the military. I have my own challenge coin. It's still in the wrapper, so I want to give it to you that way. Thank you. My coin has the congressional seal, but on the other side, it sort of has what I've been through in politics and life as a single mom. But my son's my big inspiration. But it talks about the most important principles that I stand for, thanks to my parents and wonderful friends and a great community that I grew up in. But it's about integrity, it's about courage, compassion, and tenacity. And those are the things that have gotten me ahead. So I wanted to give them all to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Do you remember where you were when you say that? Doing very well.
The Mexican.